Football fans, Gooners, welcome to the audio version of the August 7th YouTube livestream by the Uncensored Arsenal. Our topic then was how big is the 21-22 season for Mikel Arteta? Thanks to our special guest, Tim Head, former professional cricketer and now teaching English at a UK university, as well as the usual stalwarts, Blackburn George and Javed. Stay tuned for more. Football fans, Gooners of the world, welcome to today's edition, August 7th edition of the Uncensored Arsenal live stream on YouTube and Twitter. See, a couple of people have checked in. Hit that like button once you get a chance. And to all the other listeners or viewers on Twitter, I encourage you to subscribe and to like this YouTube channel so we can gain more viewers. Having gotten that out of the way, it is my pleasure to welcome as our special guest today, the one and only Tim Head, an ardent Arsenal fan, one-time professional cricketer for Sussex Cricket Club back in the day, probably back in my day. And I also have, as usual, one and only Blackburn George, the Ars blogger from the Positively Arsenal blog. And I have Javed, my good friend and writer for Uncensored Arsenal, part-time writer. I'm going to show you up. Omi is here with us after a little break. Omi, welcome. Tim, it's good to have you here. I'm going to try to feature you at some point. If I can master the video here. Tim, welcome.
Nice to be here, Shotta. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yes, it was my pleasure. I hope that this is, how do I get you? Well, this is all, I'm not sure. Anyway, Tim, I'm going to find a way to feature you in no time at all. It's showing me entirely, I think. But Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself. You were a one-time professional cricketer in the 80s, I think. Tell us about yourself before we get going.
Well, even further back than that.
Yes. Go ahead, Tim.
I wanted to do was to play sport for a living, and I was lucky enough to have the chance to do that. And I think what was interesting was the speed with which I went from being a promising youngster to an old has-been, but managed to have a little bit of fun along the way, and was very, very privileged to play alongside some truly great cricketers, and also to play against some pretty special players from your sort of neck of the woods. I remember, fantastic experience keeping wicket behind the great Sir Vivian Richards.
You did?
Which was a fantastic experience. I remember watching him take 4 fours in an over off a quick South African bowler called Garth LaRue. And that was a very special moment. I was also lucky to, just bringing Omi into to play, I was lucky to keep wicket to the great Imran Khan in his sort of pre-presidential days, and also was pretty good friends with almost your namesake Omi, Javed Miandad, who was a wonderful cricketer back in the day, another captain of Pakistan. But of course, sporting careers can come to an end all too quickly for all sorts of reasons, and I was very fortunate when my sporting career was over to find a decent sort of second career, and I've ended up, as some people will know, teaching a bit of English, which I've done for several years now, and of course a fair bit of sports coaching too.
Well, Tim, I don't know if my guest here can discuss literature with you or Mike, but we have people here who want to talk football with you. And when did you become an Arsenal fan? As a cricketer, back in my day, there are a lot of we had traditional. High schools just like you. There's a pattern. Our high schools are patterned off the English, and you would play football in winter, and then in the spring term, trimestral system. It wasn't the semestral system.
It's interesting you say that because
Yes.
right at the very start of my cricket career in the sort of early 1970s, I think that was the time where people were sort of just coming to the end of being able to play both football and cricket
Right.
professionally. And I can remember probably in the late 1970s, one winter where a few of us Sussex cricketers who, for whatever reason, had decided not to go and coach overseas in the winter, we thought we'd have a bit of fun. We put a football team together, and we had no lack of people who wanted to play us on Sunday mornings, and it was a fun thing to do. And we had some pretty good players on our side because we were reasonably fit and good at sport. Got to March, early April, and it was decided that we'd have a little charity football match, and we played against a side made up of ex-Brighton and Hove Football Club professionals.
Yes.
And as we lined up and were introduced to the crowd, it struck me that we were going to have no difficulty whatsoever in running rings around this side of what to us seemed like sort of old men. I got a little bit suspicious when I looked across at their lineup and saw the size of their sort of thighs and their knees, their calves.
Yes.
But thought we'd do them for speed. And to be honest, we were a good side, but we didn't get a kick of the ball all game because they just have that extra professional know-how of how to manage a game, which is why I think, when I remember that, I get so frustrated watching the Arsenal when they sort of concede a goal with 2 minutes to go before half time. And I think, oh, for goodness sakes, can't you just keep hold of the ball and manage the game a little bit better?
Yes.
Just like those old pros used to do back in the day. But then again, they're playing against better players than we ever were. So,
well, as somebody who sat up in the stands and watched cricket, we would say, "Oh the hell! How did you miss that catch, Tim? It's getting on to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the day. You have been behind the wicket for a half a day, and that was an easy one. So you should be humble there." But Tim, I think the audience wants to know. So, how did you become an Arsenal fan? How did you transfer your loyalty from Sussex to Arsenal? And by the way, people have finally figured, I think you've seen that, how to bring up Tim solo. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, as you say, I sort of grew up down on the south coast, and I ended up supporting Brighton, and that was a fun thing to do. The Brighton players used to leave tickets for us cricketers, and we sort of got quite friendly with a fair few of them, and so I enjoyed Brighton. And in fact, my first visit to Highbury was when Brighton were in the semi-final of an FA Cup. I think they beat Sheffield Wednesday 2-0, if I remember rightly, with Jimmy Case scoring a sort of 35-yard screamer. But when I moved away from Brighton, sort of got involved in a different sort of life, I spent a fair bit of time not watching football at all. And strange as it may seem now, and Nick Hornby recounts this quite well in his book FIFA Pitch, football suddenly became not that popular a thing in the UK. And with I suppose the Heysel disaster and then the Hillsborough disaster not long after that, and I think the Conservative government at the time were really, probably Margaret Thatcher come to think of it, were sort of quite happy to see football die away almost. But then the Premier League came into being, and I think that the then Conservative government began to realise that there was a financial upside to supporting the game, and gradually, the game has sort of emerged and evolved into commercially how it is now in the UK. I started supporting Arsenal quite simply because a friend of mine, Crystal Palace supporter, Got tickets to go and watch Palace play Arsenal, I think in the fourth round of the FA Cup. And it was a truly desperate game. It was 0-0 at Highbury, and neither side looked particularly like it. I think it was the days of the great sort of Arsenal back four, but they'd had very little, it seemed, going forward. And it so happened that I quite enjoyed the experience of going to a football game again. Hadn't been for several years. And sort of in 10 days' time, the replay was on the television. And there wasn't so much live sport on in those days. And I watched it again and, of course, began to recognise some of the Arsenal players. And my father, having been an Arsenal fan back in the day, I thought, oh, this wouldn't be a bad side to start to support. I think in a funny sort of way, I was attracted to them because they were so bad.
That was a Graham team?
Yeah, it was a truly sort of desperate side. And I thought, I've always had a sort of slight sort of weakness for supporting an underdog. And I thought, well, it's not like sort of supporting a glory side. And it'll be fun to have an interest again. And so I started to support Arsenal. And of course, what I didn't know back in January or early February was that Arsenal was going to go on an extraordinary run and not only win the league, but also end up winning the cup final 1-0, I think.
What year was that?
I think it was 1994.
Yeah, it has to be Graham. It has to be George Graham's team.
Yeah. Well, no, it was just after. I think it was just after Wenger had taken over.
No. He was 90s. He was 97ish.
Okay. Well, I've got that wrong.
If I'm correct, somebody correct me. George, am I correct? You're muted.
1998, we won the league and cup double.
That was it then, right? That
Yeah,
was the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So I always sort of think things are further away than they used to be. And so that was quite nice. And I sort of remember having a bet on Overmars to score the first goal in the cup final, which he did. He scored the only goal, I think. And so from that moment on, I thought, oh yes, it's a wonderful side to support. But all sorts of things were happening in my life as well. And although Arsenal then went on to have all these amazingly successful years, I sort of wasn't a fanatical supporter of them at all, and
so when did you become a fanatical supporter? Because you came to Positively Arsenal. That's where we met you.
Yeah, well, the time I started to become a fanatical supporter was probably, I think, in 2013, just at the time when we sold Van Persie. And of course, this was just the time when my son was starting to really enjoy his football. He was playing for sort of a local side, and so I sort of reconnected with football basically through him. And of course, from then on, Arsenal sort of absolutely were became a total sort of I would say midlife crisis, beyond midlife crisis. Became a ridiculous obsession. And of course, I liked the fact that they were always ever so slightly underperforming, because that sort of makes me quite happy to support a side that doesn't necessarily win all the time. So I sort of can go through the pain, but sort of still have this ridiculous hope that the next game will be the one that turns everything around. And I suppose that's where I'm sort of viewing this coming season from. My head, my logic tells me that it's going to be a pretty dismal time. My heart, perhaps like most supporters, senses that this year, with no European distractions, everything's bound to click and will sort of be challenging for all sorts of excitements.
Tim, I'm going to segue to George, because George, is it 2011 or 12? The Van Persie contract? 12, correct? That Tim came on board, and you established What do you want to ask Tim about that? Because that caused a major fracture in the fan base, and you were in the middle of that. Maybe you want to throw something at Tim here before we start talking about contemporary Arsenal.
I don't, not necessarily Tim, but it was a brutal time. You know, it really was. It was a time where we'd already picked sides. There was the
Mhm.
pro Wenger and the anti Wenger mob, and then out of nowhere there came this fight between pro Wenger people about Van Persie, and people were jumping off the Wenger bandwagon and supporting Van Persie, saying he was doing the right thing. You know, it was him that had ambition, and the club wasn't sure. Oh, it was horrible. I
Yes,
mean, I was falling out with some people who are regarded as really good friends,
yes,
never to speak again. In many cases,
yes.
and certainly never to be allowed to speak to them directly again. No, it was brutal. And
And Tim joined the fray at Positively Arsenal in 2013,
Well,
and that means
that's
he
right.
took your side. Correct, Jim? Tim?
No, absolutely, because as well as sort of falling in love with football again and starting to really support the Arsenal, that was the time where I discovered social media,
Yes,
and sort of found it particularly exciting to be able to sort of share my interest, which I thought I was sort of destined to have as a sort of kind of a solitary thing. To suddenly find that there was this sort of amazing social media world where I could sort of debate and share ideas and all the rest of it. And I remember very clearly, looking at all sorts of different websites at the time. But I remember a particular Twitter argument between George and I think some chap from Yorkshire. I think Yorkshire Gunner he might have called himself. And George's point at the time was the argument he was putting forward was that if a club stopped doing all the things that made you want to support it in the first place, if the club ditched its values, then it would
yes,
be perfectly legitimate to stop supporting the club. And of course, the other side of that argument was that just proves, George, that you were never interested in Arsenal at all. You were only interested in Wenger, I think was how the argument went.
yes. I remember that debate.
But I was so taken with the sort of passionate belief with which George was arguing his case that I thought, oh well, and I saw positively Arsenal, and so from that point I started to look at the site, and of course was lucky enough to have all sorts of conversations, on the various blog posts with some sort of truly wonderful Arsenal supporters, and that
There
helped.
are some great people there, very great people. But I
But it
want to
is,
bring Omi in here because Omi, where were you in 2013? I know, I'm not. You're a young guy, but I'm sure you're familiar with Van Persie and the whole Van Persie. And how do you relate this to how relate your experience to Tim? Because I want to bring you in here. I don't want to leave you out of this discussion before we go on to the contemporary situation.
Um, I first watched Arsenal in around 2004 and 2005 when Thierry Henry was playing, basically.
Yes.
Because I was a huge fan of Thierry Henry, and I think that was a part of the reason that I started watching Arsenal. But then the thing that got me interested was the style of play with which Arsenal were playing. And of course, the more I came to know about Arsene Wenger and the more I learned about the guy, I was more fascinated by him than anyone else. But really, the moment that I really started following Arsenal and started watching every single game was that 11 and 12 season.
When
That
Van Persie went
Yeah, one
crazy.
person. Yeah, when Cesc Fabregas was sold and when Nasi went, and then came the Van Persie season. So that was the moment that I really started getting myself tuned into Arsenal, and from there on, I don't think I've ever missed a match of Arsenal ever.
But
So
Van Persie scored
yeah,
31 goals that season, by the way. You know
yeah,
that, do you? Yeah.
yeah. I watched every single game of that season.
Yes.
So I know everything that happened in that season. So yeah, I think that was that was a very Arsenal-like season, I would say. In certain games we are very good, and then we are very good, and we will beat a team that is expected to beat us, and then we will go to place like what you would say. I think we went to Blackburn and did a draw, something like that, if I remember. And then
Probably,
when they came,
and everybody went
something like
crazy.
that, yeah, yeah. So that was that kind of a season, 1 minute up, 1 minute down, kind of like thing. But it was a good end. I would say that was a very good end to the season, and some of the goals that Van Persie scored that season was just, I mean, fantastic. Was fabulous. I remember the goal that he scored at Enfield. That was in I think in around 89th or 90th minute. That was, I mean, excellent technique, I would say. So
Who?
yeah,
Which,
I
which one
have
was that? Which one was that? Which one was that? Omi against who?
Liverpool at
The
Anfield.
ball that came over that he hit one time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The assist that was provided by Alex Song,
Yes,
and
a
it
long
was
ball.
a
He
good one.
looked over.
And
Yes,
the
yes.
and a similar goal, there was a similar goal that he scored against Everton as well. I think at Emirates that season.
Mm-hmm.
Those two goals, I mean, always stood out in my mind. And it, and then of course next season, of course, there was a heartache basically of Van Persie leaving, and you think, okay, we had something that we built, and we are now again back to zero. But I think the team that we started building from there on, when we basically signed players like Giroud, Bidowski, and Cazorla, I think that is a team that, in my mind, is very underrated. Arsenal squad, and
Yeah.
I think that squad had a lot of quality that they basically did not only they did. I mean, they did at certain times they did better than our what our team did in 2007-8 season, and the other couple of seasons that we talk about so much. So I have very good memories about that seasons and about that period of Arsenal.
But what I was trying to get is that you can relate to that transformation of Tim, can't you? I mean, to that 2013 season, 13, correct?
Mhm.
Right?
Transformation in what sense?
Yeah. Well, in general, I mean, he says that he became an ardent supporter then, and I'm just was trying to find out from you how you felt about that particular year. And nonetheless, I don't want us to labor that point. Tim, today in 2 weeks we play Brentford,
Yeah.
right?
Is it a week today?
And
Is it?
I ran a poll, and I want to thank people like George. I want to thank Jeff Arsenal and all the members of my team who reposted it. And we had 1,300 people. Tim, 52% says top four would be sufficient for Arteta. 46%, 46% says top six. Where do you stand, Tim? I know you saw this poll, and I know you have considered. I know you have considered this issue of what is adequate. What is an adequate performance by Arteta? And I want to lay this out. We are without Europe. Arteta has gone through up to this date 3 transfer windows, and approximately £200 million have been spent on players. I'm going to ask, where do you stand? Is top four sufficient in the 21-22 season, Tim?
Well, I mean, the way I would answer that is sufficient to who? Because ultimately it will be the people who own the club who decide what in their mind is sufficient or not sufficient.
1 week.
And I think that many people, many supporters would be inclined to think that anything less than top four would be an absolute disaster. I would incline to thinking that top six would be a reasonable goal to aim for, a reasonable target. Disappointing though that might be, but I think if top six got the side back into some sort of kind of European competition, I think that would then sort of set them up moving forwards But I think anything less than that would be very, very disappointing. And when we're talking about, what is sufficient, I think you've also got to look at the strength of the other teams around us. I think you also have to look at where our particular squad is. I think that there have been some purchases made recently that haven't necessarily turned out very well at all. It would seem that some money has been wasted on some disappointing transfers, and I think that the squad is in an interesting state. I know that some people say that Arteta is not willing to give young players much of a chance. I would say that he's perfectly willing to give young players of sufficient quality a real chance. But I think it is also interesting, isn't it, that when you look at the amount of hope that is being invested in Saka and Smith Rowe, these are really quite young shoulders to invest such hopes on. And I think that the disappointment to me has been that some of the older players in the squad haven't actually sort of really shared much of the burden from those younger shoulders. So from my point of view, I would say that top six is a realistic aim, but I hope that it would also be achieved with some kind of football that people felt proud of. I don't think that the very early part of the season will make for comfortable watching, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if after the first of 3 or 4 games, the side then went on a bit of a run through the latter sort of stages of September, October, November, and I could see the club being in a reasonable state around about December time.
So George, what do you think about that? Tim, George, because Tim is saying that top 6 is reasonable. 52% top 4 is the expectation. Tim is saying based on the current composition of the squad, he thinks that some of the signings have been a disappointment. Of course, Tim is a very diplomatic guy. He doesn't tell us which signings have been disappointing. But George, where do you stand on this?
Well, you're not going to like this. I agree with Tim. I think top 6 is where we're at. We're the 5th biggest spending club, and the 4 above us are way above us. It's not marginal. And because Arsene Wenger used to get us top 4 on a shoestring budget, it's not fair to expect Mikel Arteta or any other manager to do the same as someone who I regarded as the best manager in the world. So much as I dislike Arteta for some of the things he's done, and I do, I'm not going to set a bar that I feel is setting him up to fail. If I were to say, oh, he has to get top 4 because we're not in Europe, we have to say, why are we not in Europe? We're not in Europe because the team wasn't good enough, and we've not really improved it. And he's not been given the funds to improve it. I just think it's unfair on him to expect him to do something that Arsene Wenger did. He's not Arsene Wenger. And I can't imagine anybody else who would do similar to Arsene Wenger. So why should he have to live up to that expectation? But I'm with Tim that I think we should be 5th. I think that's where we should be. I think that's par for us. And I think we can be 5th with this squad. And I think that we can play good, attractive football that makes us want to turn the telly on to watch Arsenal play to come in that position. And if he does that, despite me not liking him, I think he's done his job. And I think that's fair.
George,
and that's where I am.
I blame that bastard Arsene Wenger. He made top 4 look so easy. Where you stand, Omi? Do you think that top 4 is a reasonable expectation, or as George and Tim are saying, that top 6 is about where we should be? Where do you stand?
I think top four should be the expectation from fans, and it should be the expectation from board as well. But if you are talking about in realistic terms, I don't think that I see Arsenal finishing in top four. So if you are setting the top four as expectations, then you can say that okay, that I might be setting up Arsenal to fail or Arteta to fail by setting that kind of expectation. But I think this shows the state of the club that it is in currently. That we have regressed so much in last couple of years that our expectation levels have dropped from demanding to be looking towards being the Premier League champions towards top four and now towards top six. And now we are saying, okay, we are so backwards that a European position would be enough to basically say, okay, good job, and let's go to the next season. So I think it mostly shows what state we are currently in. But a season without Europe and with Arteta going into his second full season, I think the expectation and the demand should be top four. And but it is right that I do agree with Tim and George that we are not going to get it. So I'm not sure what expectation we should then put, but top four has to be.
But most fans, I don't know how many of them are on Twitter watching us right now. I see one on YouTube. No problem. You know that we're going to post this, and I know we get a lot of feedback then. But most fans think the team has been improved. Ben White is going to improve us. $50 million. In fact, I heard it's $58 million. I don't think we can expect much from Lokongo and the Nuno. Is it Tavares? I think is his name, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The young kids, I think they're being bought for the future. Why? What has improved?
Well, let me
I'm asking a bit. Well, or George, who wants to take that one?
I'll take it. Let me ask you then.
I don't know. I don't know where we have improved.
Hold on, George is taking this.
Okay.
These people who say we've improved, well, they're just not looking at it logically. We haven't improved. Ben White, I think it's a decent purchase. I think it's a lot of money, but he's replacing David Luiz, who was one of the best ball-playing centre backs in the league. So we haven't actually improved that position. Tavares is a backup, so we've not improved that position. And we were 8th twice. So with this level of investment, you're not going to catch teams up that are ploughing hundreds of millions of pounds into players. I mean, Manchester City won the league and they've just bought Grealish and they'll probably buy Harry Kane. Chelsea today...
£400 million each.
Yeah. The Chelsea today we've just heard that they're going to buy Lukaku.
Again.
£120 million. Mm-hmm. So we've not improved to this stage where not only are we going to catch them up from where they were last year ahead of us, but they're further ahead now. United have invested big again.
Sancho.
We haven't seen what Liverpool have done yet, but they were much better than us anyway. So we're not gonna finish top four. We're simply not, and I don't think we should. And I don't think we can. And I don't think we can next year, the year after, or the year after that with this level of investment. And I'm not going to blame Stan Kroenke because we're in a rigged game. We're not playing with a straight set of cards. It's rigged. 2 of the clubs are so financially doped, it's a joke. Manchester United have twice as much money as everybody else. So that's 3 of them way out of our league. That leaves 1 spot. And that 1 spot is Liverpool, who are 7 times European champions and have a massive fan base worldwide and commercial revenue. We're not going to catch them either. I think we're looking back nostalgically on what Arsene Wenger did in the first 9 years of his reign and expecting that we could possibly do the same when those sort of things can't happen anymore because the landscape's changed. The game wasn't rigged then. The game wasn't fixed. It was, we only had 1 club that would cut out spenders in the market, and that was Manchester United. And they dominated the league for like 20 years almost because they had the most money. Wasn't it? People will say, oh, it's because Alex Ferguson was the greatest manager ever. It wasn't. It was because they had more money than everybody else. Just like because Manchester City have more money than everybody else. Just like PSG dominate in France because they have more money than everybody else. And we haven't got that. We haven't got Arsene Wenger. So to say to Mikel Arteta, you have to get 4th or you're going to get sacked. I'll tell you now, if that's the bar, get 4th or get sacked, we'll sack him and we'll sack the next guy and we'll sack the next guy and we'll be turning managers over 2 or 3 a week, 2 or 3 a season for the foreseeable future because we're not a club that can fight for top 4 anymore. We're not. We should adjust our expectations and stop harking back to when we had the best manager in the world and a time where we could actually buy and keep some of the best players in the world. We've not adjusted our expectations, and there's a danger that because I don't like Arteta, that I'll use that as an excuse to say, oh, he should go because he's not got top 4. And I'm not falling into that trap. I'm going to give him a reasonable shot and still dislike him.
I'm going to come back to you, Tim. But Omi, do you have a rebuttal to that? Do you, yes, I won't speak for you. Do you have a rebuttal for that? Feel free, because Omi, let me put it this way, and Tim and George. There are people on Twitter, on the blogs, and in the fan base who think that we should be top 4 and that the signings have strengthened us and that Mikel Arteta is a great coach and in a year, after a year and this is his team, they are saying it, and that's perhaps the 52%. So I'm throwing that to you as a possible rebuttal.
I mean, I don't know because firstly, I do not believe in any of those things. Arteta can in time become a great coach and become a good coach, but what he has shown us in his 1.5 season, I do not think so. That he is at a position where you can say, okay, that we can trust him enough to say that, okay, if we give him an average team, he can make it good. Because currently I feel that last season, what I personally feel is that last season we finished 8th, but I don't think that the teams that one of the 2 teams that finished above us had a better squad than us. So
Tottenham and
you can say West Ham. You can say
West Ham.
I mean, Everton didn't finish very far from us, and there was Spurs as well. So considering that, I do not think that we can consider Arteta to be a great coach, because a great coach should at least have a capability of taking the best out of the squad that he has. And I don't think that finishing 8th was taking best out of the squad that he had. So personally, I do not believe in that thing. As far as the signings are concerned, I think the only one big signing that we have made so far is at centre back, and I'm not sure if that is going to improve us or not, because bear in mind that we have also lost David Luiz as well. and David Luiz was a key component of Arteta's style of play.
You were left there. Something went there, so I'll switch to the group. Omi. So Tim, until he comes back,
Yeah.
I got in a little tete-a-tete with my good friend Edmonton on Twitter. Eddie. He calls himself Edmonton, and I took the position that 45%, and I like Biso. Biso, he's here. George, she said George always makes sense, and it's frustrating. You're being paid a compliment indirectly, George. But I made the point that 46% I would be satisfied with top 6, and maybe they are more reasonable. George is saying they are more reasonable than ours, than we are. I sense that you and George are in agreement there, Tim.
Well, I was just sort of trying to be realistic, and I think George sort of summed the situation up much better than I did. And maybe some people would say I'm sort of not ambitious enough, but
to quote yours truly.
Yeah, but one thing I would say is that it will be very interesting, and I think that when you pose the question, will it be sufficient for Arteta? I think that what will be interesting is that this season looks as if it could actually be a very real test for him, because we're going to be in a situation, aren't we, where hopefully crowds will be back, and that COVID willing, most games will take place fairly straightforwardly, with not too many players having to isolate or whatever it happens to be. But I think it is a very different set of players now than it was at this time last year. None of us on the outside would have known actually what was going on inside. We don't know which groups of players were with Arteta, which groups of players weren't, which ones were helpful, which ones were not. That was a sort of a great unknown for all of us, and anybody who claims to know, unless they were actually present in the dressing room, is only speculating. But what I would say is that much is made by many people of it, Arteta now having got his players. Well, I'm not so sure about that, but what I do think is that it will be a pared down squad compared to how it was last year. It needs to be, because we haven't got the matches for so many players to play in. We've got some young players. It's nice to think at this time of the season that everybody will be wanting to play for the coach, and that maybe some of his particular ideas are becoming sort of ingrained in the footballing habits of the players. So it is possible, it's not necessarily likely, but it is entirely possible that actually some of the results that are achieved this season are slightly better than perhaps the more pessimistic among us are anticipating. So I think it will be very interesting to see how things progress. Will we get a sense that this group of players are playing attractive football, that they're getting results that perhaps nobody expected them to get? Are we getting a sense of any kind of momentum? Are we getting a sense of any sort of joy back in the ground with people watching the players perform? So I think that by the time we get to December, many of those questions will have been answered, for better or worse. So I think that whilst I would think it was unreasonable to say somebody has got to finish in this particular place, otherwise they've had a disastrous season, I think it will at the very least be able to get a sense of whether Arteta is taking this group of players towards where they might realistically expect to be. And what we're hoping for from a manager, of course, is that he's going to make the whole worth a little bit more than the sum of its parts.
Well, Tim, I get you there, and this is where I suppose I'm gonna be differ from George a bit. And I heard, George. Well, people think that we don't, but George and I differ sometimes. And I think I've done a lot of thought about this, and I'm reading. So I'll share this with you. A lot of reading on Medium. There's a lot of guys writing about tactics and getting into the weeds. A lot of what the layman doesn't want to see. But one of the things that I've come to the conclusion is that Arteta is very structured. What people don't seem to, not many people realize is that Pep plays a very structured game. It's called positioning. He divides the field in 5 lanes and 5 quadrants, and the players have to be in certain positions and respond in a certain way. And he's trying to do in my opinion, he's trying to lay that same template at Arsenal. Now, we don't hear much about that, and which is completely different from the free-flowing organic game of Arsene Wenger. And I don't think that we're going to see much difference here. George, I'm going to throw this out to you. I know Tim said this twice, that he's hoping for attractive football. I mean, I thought Tuchel, when he came in at Chelsea, was reorganized them in a couple of weeks to play a more effective and attractive brand of football. And I just don't see this from Arteta. What are your thoughts on this, George?
Yeah, well, let's not get confused here. I don't think Arteta will succeed. I think he'll fail. I think he has failed, and I think he'll continue to fail. But that doesn't mean I'm setting him a bar that he's going to have to fail on. That's all I'm saying. I actually expect him to fail. I don't expect attractive football. I do think it's structured. That in itself isn't a bad thing if you have the players who can do it and you have a manager who can see it. Arteta might be every bit as good tactically as Pep Guardiola. If you gave Mikel Arteta the Manchester City team, they might be just as good as Manchester City are under Guardiola. So I don't want you to get thinking that I'm backing Arteta here and saying that, if he gets 50, he's done a good job. He's done what he should do if he gets 50. I don't think he will. I think he'll fail. I think we have failed. And I don't think we'll see attractive football. That's gone. And that's another thing we've got to get over. We really do. We keep saying, it's not Arsene.
You're killing us, George. You're killing us.
Arsene Wenger this, Arsene Wenger that. Arsene's gone. He's not coming back. And unfortunately, the opportunity has been lost to take his legacy forward, because we should have brought in the coach at that point that would have continued to play attacking, possession-based, free-flowing football. And we didn't. That squad started to be deconstructed. Then Arteta took it even further. He got rid of our best player, Mesut Ozil, the only one the only shining star in our entire squad. So that was a mistake, according to me. So I think he'll fail, but I think we've got to stop setting Arsene Wenger targets for Mikel Arteta or any other manager. There isn't going to be another Arsene Wenger. And if we want to, you see it on Twitter all the time. Somebody will post a goal that Arsenal scored 5, 6, 7 years ago. 20 touches of the ball from one end to the other, 1-2s into the back of the net, walking it into the net and say, this is what we've given up. Yeah, it's gone. It's fucking gone. Stop crying about it. We loved it. But you can't expect somebody else to replicate that. He was a once in a lifetime generational manager, and he's gone. And if we don't enjoy what we've got, if we don't make the most of Saka, if we don't enjoy him, Xhaka, Emile Smith-Rowe, Kieran Tierney, if we don't hope that Ben White becomes a good central defender. All we'll do is spend the rest of our lives, and I've not got that much longer to go, moaning about why we don't play football like Arsene Wenger used to have us playing. It won't do. We've got to readjust our expectations and the expectations of a manager coming in to try and fill the boots that can't be filled. The biggest problem I have is the people that still think it was the right thing to do to get rid of Wenger, but that's a completely different argument.
Well, let's talk about this, and that was perhaps what's going through my mind. What do you think, Omi? George is saying, don't set a high bar for Arteta. He can't reach it, but don't expect him to succeed, to play great football. Your thoughts on that? Is he right?
I think we have seen enough to say that don't expect Arteta to play expressive football. I think on that we can agree. Because I think as a manager, you get to know about a manager a lot when the team is, down, or when the team is losing, or when you have your backs against the walls. And I think that's where you get to know that what kind of decisions the manager looks to make. Are they attacking? Are they too, narrow-minded? Are they too constrained? Or are they basically like how much risk he is willing to take, basically? And I think in that regard, when you compare Arsene with Arteta, I think you can see that they are poles apart. Because Arteta always, even when Arsenal are losing and Arsenal need a desperate goal, Arteta always tries to keep the tactical shape first, and then basically tries to see, okay, what he can experiment within that shape and within that system. Whereas Arsene used to be very flexible about that. He would happily take a fullback for a winger. He would happily take a defensive midfielder for an attacking midfielder, and made these kind of changes, which basically will change not only the shape but also the approach that with which Arsenal will, and the intensity with which Arsenal will attack. So I think these are the things that you get to know a lot about manager when you basically see him game to game. And I think in 1.5 season, I personally feel that I have for what I have seen with Arteta, I do not think that playing expressive football is his way of coaching, because I think he's more comfortable when everything goes according to his plan, and every pass is made in a structured way, rather than leaving it to the players to to kind of think freely, to see where they can move to make more impact on the pitch. Like is the player allowed to float freely, and small things like these. So I think they do make up a lot. And what I have seen, I would say that Mikel Arteta is more closer to Jose Mourinho kind of coaching rather than Arsene Wenger kind of coaching. And I think as an Arsenal Football Club, this is the only thing that used to separate us from the other big clubs. Even in the later Arsene Wenger eras that were not successful, like from the '05 to 13 season, like in those 8 years that we didn't win the trophy, we always were good to watch. And I think that is something that has disappeared. And unless we get a coach like that that can basically bring it back, I don't think I can say it again. But again, bringing a coach alone doesn't help in that regard. You have to have a team that suits that style of play as well. And I don't think that we have a team currently that suits that style of play as well.
Yeah,
Because
very functional players.
Because when you look at the midfield, I think the only player that can play that kind of system, and that can play that kind of football and can dominate the opponent's midfield is Granit Xhaka. And uh, apart from that, I don't think that we have anyone that can basically influence himself in a way that past Arsenal midfields used to do.
Well, Omi, your George says George say you're longing for the past. What you said, Tim, is George right? Because is George right? Are you think we're too longing too much of the past it's time to look forward. Are you thinking, and are you agreeing with George that you pessimistic about Arteta as a coach, or are you hoping that he will come to? Because you're hoping for attractive football team. That's your hope.
Yeah, well, I think at times I saw football that looked quite attractive.
Yes.
I think that not as much. I think that Arsenal still face the problem, as many clubs do, that many of the teams that they're playing against are sort of playing with two banks of five,
Yes.
basically defensive, and I think that whether you're Manchester City or Barcelona or Liverpool or whoever, finding a way through that is not always easy. And so much of the sort of back and forwards and probing sort of approach is perhaps a response to that. And I think that also, I think that Arteta pragmatically saw that sort of at times it made sense to do that ourselves against better teams. But I think that I think that where I sort of slightly differ from you guys perhaps is thinking that, well, albeit he played a lot of football for Everton under Moyes, he did play a lot for Arsenal under Arteta.
Under Wenger.
He's under Wenger. Yeah, he spent a lot of time under Guardiola. So I find it impossible to believe that he's suddenly lost all of those sort of attacking instincts. And as I said earlier, I'm just hoping that that he'll be in better health than he perhaps was last year, that it'll be a more orthodox season, and that with some of these younger players perhaps growing in confidence, who knows?
But
as I said,
Tim,
the point of being a fan for me is to have this sort of absurd optimism. Well, secretly knowing it probably will come to nothing.
Well, Tim, you're a professional sportsman. There's some coaches that are very conservative and some that are positive, take risk, even cricket.
No,
sure. What do you think about that? I'm giving you a chance to respond to that before I ask my final question. Go ahead.
Well, I think that it's increasingly hard for any coach these days to get away from the statistical analysis that is going on.
Yes.
And I think that sport, whether it's cricket or football or rugby, is becoming increasingly dominated by outstanding coaching, which has sort of squeezed the life out of the sport a little bit. And I think that Arteta, I think he'll prove to do quite nicely. That is my belief. I think he'll do better than last season, but as George says, I don't think it'll result in a top four place. But I'd be hopeful for fifth, and who knows?
Well, we're all agreed on that. I just think that you are a little bit more optimistic about his coaching than I think the three of us are. The final question here, guys, because I don't want to go over an hour much anymore, because I think that's much, a lot for the audience. And I'll start with George. So, George, what is your, I think we'll do this again, but what is your final prediction? Currently, where we will end up, and say in a year, where will Arteta be? And I'm going to ask all of you this: in a year, where will we end up, and where will Arteta be? Will he still be here with us? In your opinion, considering all the factors that we have discussed in this stream before, because the owners are apparently very satisfied with him so far. So give me your feeling on that.
I think we'll be 7th or 8th again, and he'll be gone.
Omi, where do you think we'll end up, and what will be the fate of Arteta?
I think we will be playing around the 6th place, somewhere, 7, 6, somewhere kind of. And I think my prediction is that fans in the stadium are going to have a major impact this season. both on the team and the result and the manager. And I don't think that it's going to be a good news for Mikel Arteta.
Tim, you have the final word.
I think we'll have a good run at fourth, and we'll end up fifth, and the side will benefit from playing in Europe in a season's time.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, George. Thank you, Omi. That is a lovely one. The audience is gonna hold you to your word. But it will be interesting, and we'll have a lot of opportunities to talk about this. I see we have a commentator here, one of our good old standbys. Not standby, but one of our many presenters. Biso thinks we'll be 7th or 8th. So I'm going to hold her to that as well. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for coming on board.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheerio, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Don't go to